Hi, everybody, and welcome. I'm Lane Shelton, my co-host Andy Bernard. This is our what we call our Microsoft EA Shakeup series. These are spin-offs from that. Microsoft made that big licensing announcement about the changes coming October 31st, where they're sort of resetting all their pricing leveling around subscription services. It was a big announcement, a lot of follow-up activities, a lot of new opportunities, looking at EA versus CSP being one of them. So in this episode, this is actually part two. The first episode we covered EA versus CSP from a licensing perspective, kind of programs. Now we're going to talk products. Some of this is in the weeds. There is a download, so if you haven't downloaded it yet, hit pause, get the download, and so you can follow along at home. But just to kind of recap, enterprise, by bringing all the prices into one level, everybody kind of starts now. Come November 1st, everybody sort of is on the same playing field. They all have, everybody's basically paying. Starting point is Microsoft's published list price. Heretofore, CSP was primarily aimed at smaller customers, but because of this leveling effect, it means that it might be more viable for other organizations, even bigger organizations to look at. So, but the devil's in the details. So we're breaking down all of the very specific details because they are different programs and there's different program features, which we covered in episode 3. Here, we're going to cover like product specific features, like what are product differences between EA and CSP, so that hopefully, you kind of take those two things together and make an informed decision as to whether, CSP is something that you should be considering between now and whenever your next renewal is after November 1st. That fair?
Yep. Yeah. And I think, a lot of this stuff is going to be, like you said, in the weeds, but it's use rights and it's product terms that are different from the programs, right? M365 E5 is still E5. It's not a different experience or a different service that you're getting, but the programs do offer different benefits, and that's really what this session is going to cover. So I think just starting with general licensing terms here, comparing purchase options, license only perpetual, that is available on CSP. That was actually an involvement. It wasn't initially first released on CSP. So that's been an involvement over the last few years to bring perpetual, kind of one time only, but you own it, sort of licensing into the CSP world. Underneath the enterprise agreement, you don't have that one time only because you're getting software assurance automatically included. So you're renewing software assurance. There's the maintenance cost that goes along with that. So you don't have just that one, I want to own it, and that's it.
I mean, you could, in theory, go to an MPSA.
You could,
if it's, as long as it's not one of those products that's restricted and governed by the enterprise agreement. So it's tricky. Not a whole lot of perpetual license buys going on anymore. Like it's not really much of a a thing anymore. But those licenses, those perpetual licenses are still available. Under under CSP. You would have to get them a different way under EA. The other thing too is for those of you that have, might not remember, some organizations have moved everything to subscription models now. But software assurance is the maintenance on the license. Remember in the old days, like you had the perpetual license and you bought the maintenance, which gave you the upgrade rights, and there were some, some additional benefits that have kind of eroded over time. Pretty much you're buying upgrade insurance now these days.
Or it's by product. There's like license mobility and like some of those things. So.
Or hybrid use benefits, things like that. There are some benefits that still attend. So under the EA, as Andy said, like everything you purchase that's not a subscription has software assurance included. And that's a big difference. Software assurance is not available under the CSP program. Doesn't mean you can't get it. Again, we talked in the last episode that sometimes smaller customers that have big server footprints can actually find that they can improve and save money by going MPSA on their servers if they decide to leave, exit the enterprise agreement. And that may apply here too. There's different pools of licenses. This is like really old school licensing, but still in effect, servers are one pool, systems, which is the Windows operating system, another pool, and then applications. So if your server footprint's big, that might get you level D server pricing, but you probably probably not going to hit level A app pool pricing, unless you're going to buy like 15,000 copies of Visio or something, which most people aren't doing anymore. So, but that being said, you can get software assurance under the MPSA program.
You can have, certainly companion like CSP and companion MPSA if you needed software assurance.
Yep.
Absolutely.
But this next one, step up SKUs, that's probably one of the biggest challenges to CSP. Yes. In that, let's just to refresh, a step up SKU, if you have this version of a product and there's a higher version available, like you have standard and there's an enterprise version.
Yep.
A step up SKU basically transforms your standard license into an enterprise license for only the cost difference.
Yep.
So you buy your base license, then you buy the step up, that gives you the rights to the higher version. And then when you go to renew you might, then just renew software assurance on the higher edition. Yep. But it's like a nice, nimble way to, like if you paid for a standard license and that thing is locked for 3 years and you say, oh, wow, I don't need standard anymore, I want enterprise.
Yeah.
Well, under EA, like, where do you go? Like you're locked in. So the only prior to step ups, the only other alternative was to go buy a whole new enterprise license. And now you got shelfware. So a step up is a really neat feature of the enterprise agreement. We wish they would like come to make that parity with CSP, but as of right now,
there's nothing like that. I think we've seen too on online services, you're going say E3 to E5, same idea, right? You're paying the difference. But you can get very unique on if you own E3, maybe you just want the enterprise mobility and security E5. So you step up that component, or even at the individual Entra ID, P2. So you can get very creative on what those step ups look like. On CSP, they actually term it upgrade, but you're actually exchanging almost your say E3 to an E5, and you're invoicing after that. Upgrade is complete is now all E5. So there isn't that ability to have individual step up components. So that, it would be nice if there could be some sort of parity.
You can still upgrade your license in CSP, but it's not quite the level of nuance and flexibility that you're going to see under the enterprise agreement. So that one genuinely goes to the,
and it's really online services in that, right? Because the step up ability on perpetual is a software assurance deal. So,
but on the flip side, generally speaking, with CSP, you're not as locked in, especially if you're doing annual SKUs. So in some cases, there's not really a need for a step up because you can upgrade license. You're making new decisions every year.
Yep.
So you can choose not to renew this and just to move to that. So, step ups are a convenient midterm thing that you can do in the middle of an EA. No doubt about it. They're wonderful. It's more complicated in CSP. It's not that it's not something that would, necessarily be a deal breaker, but it's still like they're workarounds, obviously.
The next one on multi-geo licensing. So this actually is an evolvement of CSP as well. That actually hadn't been a thing until maybe a year or 2 years ago.
Yep.
So multi-geo, essentially you're getting the ability, if you're a global organization with users in maybe other countries and you want to save data locally rather than where your primary tenant location is, this has given you that ability to do that. So initially it was EA only, and then CSP services evolved, and now it's underneath that. So no difference in programs there. So you can not rest assured CSP is going to be able to accommodate that. So
what about for GCC?
GCC, there are some, I guess these next couple on GCC high, there's eligibility first that a customer has to start with. So there's a website out there. Customers would have to go out, you get approved, and then depending on, you have to evaluate, kind of the GCC versus GCC high qualifications, and kind of the FedRAMP and all of those different accolades that they come with on what cloud is best for you. But on CSP, GCC is allowed. EA, it's lead status, so Microsoft does have to approve all of that to execute any of the SKUs. Where the limitation will come in is GCC high. CSP, they don't have GCC High, but there is this AOSG partnership. We're not, SHI unfortunately isn't part of that program. There's select like government contracts, but it's very similar as CSP. But it's for really customers that would be sub 500 that don't qualify for an EA to be able to get into GCC High. EA, just like GCC, it's lead status, like you're able to do that. We see quite a few customers with an EA that has like their lead enrollment for maybe a commercial tenant that's their production, and maybe a billing enrollment where we see a lot of commercial customers that host data on behalf of the government. That's where GCC or GCC High might come in, and then you have that separate billing enrollment. They go through the eligibility, and then you just execute underneath that, and that separates out the tenancies. I mean, the EA, well, I think a lot easier to do under one like program like that. CSP, you would, in that scenario, you'd have two CSPs, one for kind of commercial, one for GCC. And then depending on GCC High, potentially EA if you're more than 500 seats, or AOSG partnership if you're less than 500. So
definitely differences there. And then these last two are fairly esoteric, but they're there. So give us the rundown on the purchase, the ESUs without pre-approval from Microsoft.
Yeah, so this is really around Windows Server and SQL Server. So I guess it started 2008, 2012 now. Those additions are going, I guess, out of the standard support cycle. So you can purchase these extended security updates for up to 3 years. The EA is lead status again, so Microsoft has to approve of that. And the alternative option is doing it through Azure Arc. And you can get invoiced through Azure then. It does provide some more flexibility to stop, and then you don't get charged in Azure. But a lot of times customers don't want to utilize the Azure Arc. There's the alternative, I guess you have a Mac key that you install on the device, and that kind of is how it recognizes where the security update should be implemented. Microsoft wants to have that conversation with the customers on why can't you use Azure Arc? So you have to tell that story first before they get to the point of, okay, heard it, like we'll allow you to purchase these extended security updates on the EA. So that's when we say, it's lead status. Microsoft has to really be involved and approve or deny that.
CSP, you can just buy it.
CSP, it's available. So you don't have to go through that. We can sell it to you.
Yeah, nice. So, okay. And then the right to install unlimited on-premise productivity service. We're talking Exchange, SharePoint, Skype.
If people are
under the EA, if all your users are covered, you get the ability to run unlimited.
Any number.
On-prem instances if you've got any pockets of on-prem. Not used nearly as much today as it was in the past, but it is a benefit that is part of the EA that's not in CSP. So in the workaround for that in the CSP world is you just go out and buy license only, probably for that would probably be a use case for buying license only.
That is interesting because the latest like Exchange release subscription version, you'd need software assurance. So it might be MPSA.
You're right. Oh yeah, you're right.
Otherwise, 2019.
You're right. So you may be going MPSA, but either way, you've got to go, outside the CSP channel.
And like, I guess this benefit too, it says M365, it's E3 or E5. The frontline plan, the F1, F3, they don't have like the dual use. So E3, E5, and then like if you went CSP, it's just maybe identifying what you're running, what you owned prior. And then if you find that you had to buy something, I mean, you're talking, a couple $1,000s for some servers.
We don't run into this too much anymore, but it's a difference that's there. Okay, now for some bigger ones. This used to be a lot bigger than it is now on the other side of these changes. But let's first, before we get into it, let's talk about what From SA is, because not everybody has it. They don't do new ones. They haven't done new From SA for a while. So like, let's refresh on like what is From SA? What does it get you?
So From SA, From Software Assurance, essentially Microsoft was trying to see the investment you've made in their previous licensing model. A lot of customers are coming from a core cal or ecal Office and a Windows license. So once you made that transition to an M365 and Office 365, they basically give you this from software assurance to see the investment that you've made. And I think it's about a 15% discount over normal, like full subscription licenses. So that's really what it is. It allowed you to also go back to a software assurance only into those old licenses if, that was a decision. I don't know that I've ever seen somebody go back.
No.
But it allowed you to do that. So that's really what the from SA was, trying to see that entitlement that you owned before and get a slight discount on
The thing
that.
is, it's been the thing that makes it challenging is it's a legacy entitlement, meaning like you can't get it anymore.
Yeah.
So if you
February
have it on something,
2024, they
so
retired it.
pro tip, if you're reducing your counts in your EA, never reduce your from SA counts until you absolutely have to, right?
Yeah.
That'd be the last thing you give up, because once you give those up, they're gone forever. And like Andy was saying, the discount's pretty substantial. So that used to be a big difference between
Yep.
EA and CSP. If you had like a level C from SA, there's 9 miles of difference between pricing between that and standard CSP pricing. But now with those prices being leveled, again, we've seen cases where, like depending on how much from SA you have, but we've definitely run models where we've seen customers that have some from SA. Like when you do the pricing comparison, they end up spending more on that. But if they had that big server footprint we were talking about before, and you shift to like say from a level B to a level D MPSA, the savings of that almost not almost always, but can wipe out the can make it a wash, or even put you ahead. Again, all depends on the numbers. But that being said, that's a big, that legacy entitlement is one that a lot of customers value, and you don't find it, unfortunately, you just don't find it in CSP. But don't let that be a deal breaker. We're just talking comparison right now. It's easy to run the numbers, to see, okay, if I gave this up, in the context of a full switch, when I'm factoring in servers and all those other things, maybe it costs you more, maybe it doesn't. The only way to know is to really run the numbers.
And I mean, I think that's an easy plug too, where Microsoft might just pull from SA, right? New customers in February 2024 can't renew into it, and then I don't know, eventually down the road, maybe they say all existing customers.
Originally, I thought it was a one-time benefit, and then Microsoft, Microsoft just let customers keep renewing. Now you got like 3 and 4 generations in agreement iterations in, and it's still there, and they're still honoring it. So that one kind of defies gravity. So but it means less than it. It's kind of been devalued with a little bit with the discounts going, the waterfall discounts going away. So that's a big factor. Just like on the last screen, probably the biggest thing to think about are those step-up SKUs. On this, that legacy from SA entitlement, that's like the biggest thing.
Yeah, agreed.
This next one, I guess, isn't going to be a thing anymore. Or tell me about the whole.
Oh, the suites with teams.
Yeah.
So just as of last week, they re-announced that Teams is coming back into the E Suite. So earlier, in the year, or I guess it was maybe last year now, Microsoft went through some antitrust lawsuit stuff, and basically it was all around Teams being bundled in and automatically coming with it. So in response to that, they said, we'll take Teams out of the E plans. So new customers would have to buy your E plans without Teams, and then
which is more expensive,
and it was more expensive
than the so
that
was kind of a cost increase.
Now they've maybe settled their differences on all of that, and so as of November 1st, Teams is being included back into the E Suites again.
Do you know if there's any price increases coming with it?
Same price.
Okay, good.
They're actually reducing the E plans, and they're increasing the standalone Teams plan.
Okay. So what does that mean if I want to, if I have it combined today, I can keep it combined?
Yeah.
Pricing should stay the same.
Yeah, exactly.
Okay.
Yep. But if you didn't use Teams and you had another third party, your price would go down.
Yeah. Yep. Okay. All right. So now we got choice.
Yep.
Whereas before it was all gymnastics and
exactly.
licensing entitlements. Now it's back to choice. So that's a good thing. talk to us about the From SA grants on, on perpetual, where you get one perpetual install of Office Pro Plus.
Yeah, so this is kind of the old legacy Office install. A lot of customers would still use that, maybe not on the M365 apps for enterprise yet. So the From SA, and actually even since they removed From SA, if you're an existing customer that's renewing from like Office into the M Suite, you do still get this right as well, but you get that one, kind of non-internet connectivity sort of install. So a lot of customers, maybe not anymore these days, but when M365 asked for enterprise first came out, this was a big deal.
That was a big deal.
Microsoft did say that this was going away, and then people kind of freaked out. So then they changed their mind and they said,
it probably is going away at some point, but right now it's a sort of a diminishing value benefit. You don't see it nearly as much. But just to recap, the From SA legacy entitlement, that's definitely the one to watch. The one to analyze very carefully in this arrangement. The Windows Client OS, this one's really tricky. Under CSP, if you want to, you can buy Windows Pro perpetual license, right?
Yes. I think
that's still the upgrade
thing,
though.
Yeah, exactly. So I think that's the key thing. And I think that trips up a lot of clients. Windows through volume licensing is an upgrade from a qualifying operating system that hopefully you got when you purchase your device. So ideally, you're purchasing a laptop. It comes with Windows 11 Pro. Don't do home. Like we see a lot of issues with that. You end up spending more trying to fix that mess. But hopefully, it's like a Windows 11 Pro. And then if you had to, make upgrades, maybe the next version of Windows Pro came out. You could do that upgrade, or maybe it's an old Windows 10 Pro and you wanted to go Windows 11. So very simple, just one time only upgrade. And they do have license only options to move to the Windows 11 Enterprise Long-Term Service Channel, or LTSC. This LTSC always reminds me of the old like XP, Windows 7, like those editions where you had one release, support lasted for 10 years. And it's, the new modern Windows 10, Windows 11, the like annual channel that they have is more like a rolling, I think it's 36 months is usually the support life cycle. And then you're always having to upgrade. So that LTSC, it is available on, EA, you had the flexibility there. CSP, we kind of have the half circle there because you have to buy license only of it. There's no software assurance like we mentioned, and if you get a subscription to like Windows E3, you're really looking at that annual, because it's that cloud like modern version. So that's what they want the use rights to follow. So that's why there's the half circle there. You can get it, license only to get your upgrade to Windows Enterprise. If you're on the subscription model, you're in the annual.
Of LTSC usage. Not a lot, but I would say like it's prevalent, but in small numbers.
Microsoft.
It's meant for like those machines that sit on a factory floor that you don't want them updating very often because they run a very stable process. They do their thing. That's all they do day in and day out. Different, especially in different economic sectors, you see. Or industry verticals, I should say, you see more usage of this, like in a manufacturing setting, et cetera.
Healthcare, like
you just get LTSC. In the EA, you don't in CSP. So it could be an additional expense if you have one of those use cases. Same thing with these additional SA use rights. This is predominantly the legacy MDOP or desktop optimization pack stuff, right? It was like advanced group policy management. It was the BitLocker centralized administration, user experience virtualization. Microsoft they still have MDOP.
They still do have it.
It's like the weirdest zombie ever. Like it's like
it's retiring.
It's been retired, but it's been retired for like they've been retiring it for like a long time, like 10 years maybe. I don't know. I don't want to date myself, but But yeah, so it used to be that they had this thing. It was a big decision too. Do you buy MDOP with Windows or do you not buy MDOP with Windows?
It was a
Those of you that have been
separate
around a long time
license.
know.
Yep.
And it
And
was
then
just
eventually it was just included.
yeah, it was little bolt-ons. Then it was just included, but in CSP it is not included.
Yeah,
correct?
no MDOP.
There is no MDOP.
Yeah.
So if you know what MDOP is, that's going to be a problem. If you're scratching your head going, "What is MDOP?" Don't worry about it. Like, you immediately don't know. Yeah. That's an old one. But let's talk about virtualization rights for Azure and Azure Virtual Desktop. What's the difference between EA and CSP?
Yeah, not a whole lot of difference here. So this is, we're talking about maybe on-prem or third party where you're doing Windows desktop operating system virtualization. You get benefits on both. In CSP, you have to have the subscription.
Yeah.
Your license only entitlement to Windows Pro upgrade or the enterprise upgrade, you don't get these additional benefits. So it has to be a subscription. The EA, you're getting software assurance or you're getting a subscription anyway, so it's included. But otherwise, from a use right standpoint, it's the same. You have the ability to have those virtualization rights, or if you want to do Azure Virtual Desktop, like all of that's included. Again, CSP, it just has to be that subscription version. I think the other important thing to call out here is the kind of bring your own operating system license to listed providers. Listed providers was a big 2019 change. When Microsoft rolled out their own dedicated Azure instance. When they did that, they changed Google, Alibaba, AWS, and there's a VMware in AWS, or there was. Those are the big ones that they called out as listed providers. In order to bring your own Windows operating system to that, you have to have a virtual desktop access per user license.
Yeah.
So if you see like VDA E3 or VDA E5, that is a bolt-on that would be required on top of this. And that's regardless of program.
Yeah, I was going to say that's available in CSP and EA, either one. So no difference there.
Yep.
And you can buy Windows 365 cloud PCs in either program.
Yep. Which I think, we're seeing a lot more.
There's a lot more bigger. A lot more bigger use cases. I think Windows 365 just is been pretty good technology. The biggest complaint was it was too expensive.
Yeah.
And I think that complaint, we still hear that, but we're seeing much larger use cases.
And other use cases too, where they have like the front line where you can have like 3-to-1 user to device ratio. So there's different availability there too, depending on your use case.
Yeah. All right. Now we're going to develop into everybody's just most favorite topic ever, Windows Server and SQL Server. So you thought Windows OS was exciting. Wait till we tell you about the differences between Windows Server and SQL Server. Okay, let's start with Windows Server. This is kind of a corollary to what we said earlier, but if you want to purchase Windows Server license and software assurance, you ain't doing it under CSP. You're doing that. That's available under EA or MPSA.
MPSA, yep.
And again, right now, the primary reason to do that is going to be you want new versions.
Yep.
You want hybrid use benefits.
Yeah, right? Azure hybrid use.
Azure hybrid use benefits. So it's not to say, you can't get it under CSP, but it is available under MPSA. And again, like I said, depending on how big your server footprint is, if you use the pro trick of shifting to MPSA level D, you might be picking up a little bit of bargain there.
Yeah.
Purchasing Windows Server as a subscription, but subscription little s, not subscription big S, right? You want to explain that one?
So EA, I guess a traditional EA, you're going to own it. It's a perpetual license software assurance. If you are in an EA subscription, it would be a subscription-based, 1 year Windows Server subscription. CSP, you can buy a license-only option or a subscription option that's sold in a 1 year subscription or a 3-year subscription. And it really was initially designed to be for AHUB.
Right.
Because
Azure hybrid use benefit.
Yep. Azure hybrid use benefit. And really it's around, buying like reserved instances.
Yeah.
Because that's 1 year or 3 year typically. So that's kind of the primary use case, but these can still be used on-prem. You can bring it to like a third-party authorized outsourcer. Authorized outsourcer is a little bit different than the listed provider. Essentially, it's everybody else except
those.
Yeah, Google, Alibaba, and AWS. So if you're using listed providers, you're sourcing Windows Server from them,
Right.
Unless you have some really old entitlements before October 2019. But yeah, that's kind of the Windows subscriptions use case. Can be used on-prem, and you're just buying 1 year or 3 year subscriptions.
And that is only under CSP. Like that's only CSP. Okay.
Yeah.
Licensed Windows Server by Virtual Core.
Yeah, this is fairly new. So October of 2022, Microsoft came out finally the ability to license Windows Server at a per VM level, which they never had before. You had data center, you license your physical,
and then you had stack standard. Anybody ever ran that licensing calculation?
Yeah. So this opened up, that ability. So EA, you automatically get rights to do virtual core if that's what you wanted to at a VM level, because it's a software assurance benefit. Right. CSP, we have kind of the half circle again with a little red flag, and that's because you have to have the subscription option to do that. License only, you wouldn't have this.
You wouldn't have
it.
You
have to have a subscription.
You have to have a subscription.
Yeah.
But in case you haven't assessed this in a while, the upshot of that licensed Windows Server by Virtual Core is if you have say a host cluster that's got big iron, like big heavy duty host machines, but running very limited Windows VMs. Maybe there's a lot of Linux VMs. Maybe it's more like Azure Virtual Desktop or something else.
Yeah.
Whereas before, no matter how you added it up, it was because remember before you had to license, each assignment of a certain number of licenses got you a certain number of VMs on that host machine, but then you had to license every host machine for the maximum theoretical capacity of the cluster, and it became a nightmare, right? And even worse to manage.
Yeah.
This though basically just says, okay, you just got to license the virtual instances, which in those clusters where they're like big clusters with limited windows, you can save a pile of money if you haven't done it already. So that's, regardless of whether you go EA or CSP, if you haven't dived deep into if you're still buying data center for everything, thinking that you got to, that's something to talk to our ITAM team about, because they can, run a scan and be like, okay, here's where we can save you money.
Yeah. In most cases, doing an individual virtual machine with Windows Server standard licensing, assuming you have standard installed, not data center, it comes out cheaper than licensing at the host with data center.
Yeah.
Now, you add virtual machines, you have to make sure your licensing is always up to date, versus data center, you kind of set it.
For that kind of savings, it's probably worth the headache.
Yep. So I think regardless of the model, doing that exercise in and of itself is important.
Now, this next one, again, with Windows Server SA benefits, obviously you get those with the subscription.
Yep, exactly.
You just don't get them if you buy license only, which most people aren't going to do anyways. But it's good, because that's what gets you also gets you the Azure hybrid use benefit, which most organizations use heavily.
Yeah, exactly. Yep.
So
I think important on that one too. It's very easy to maybe get out of compliance on that, because like a check of a button.
Oh yeah, no, when you're setting up, you're just like, I got it. Yeah, I got it.
I got it. Do I want 40% savings?
Do I want to save a lot of money? Click here. And there's no verification of whether you have the underlying criteria. There's just a big save money button. And then Microsoft wonders why people got out of compliance with that. It's like, I've been hitting that save money button every time. And that's kind of what happens. So if you are hitting that, again, talk to our ITAM team, because we can help you sort that out. This next one's so funny. I love talking about this. Windows Server base cals. You can't buy them under the EA because you already got them. It
has to be part of a suite, right?
I can't believe we're still talking about Windows Cal. But it has to be part of the suite. But under CSP, you can buy Windows Cal standalone, which I'm trying to think of a use case for this. Maybe you're not using System Center. I don't know. And
I
don't know.
Usually it's probably going to be baked into all your M365 type licensing, but I don't know. Probably not as relevant anymore, because you're getting it part of the suite.
We told you we were going all the way into the weeds, so you have to go. This definitely is way down. Okay. But bottom line, there's pretty much equivalency between EA and CSP in terms of what you can get.
Yeah, exactly.
The stuff you need, you're probably going to be able to get. There's some edge, some weird edge cases,
Yep.
If you
as long as if you have a subscription on CSP, basically it's the same as what you're getting in the EA.
Yeah.
There's no ownership on the licenses because you're subscribing.
So the next section, SQL Server, kind of a bit of a repeat in that, again, licenses with software assurance you can get under EA, can't get them under CSP. You would go the MPSA route, right? Purchase SQL Server subscriptions, you can do that under CSP.
Same idea.
Like you can't under the EA. You could under the EAS. But you can purchase those subscriptions under CSP.
Now we haven't really talked about the server and cloud enrollment, kind of that similar EA. You would have, if you had that program as well, they would offer SQL Server subscriptions.
That's true. You could. And we have some customers that made really good use of that. Like they would buy, they'd keep their existing legacy entitlements with SA because it's cheaper than the subscription if you've already bought the license. But then anything new they wanted to add would be subscription under CSP. You can do the same. I mean, subscription under SCE. You can do the same thing under CSP. But you'll probably still get a better discount under the EA because that still does have the programmatic discount. They haven't. It's kind of funny. It's like we just said, all subscriptions, they normalize the price. It's like all the capital S subscriptions they did. These types of subscriptions are not those subscriptions, and those still have the discount. So, that's the crazy one.
I think that's the next episode.
Yeah, it's the next episode. We'll get to that in the perpetual. But this one's interesting. Microsoft retired SQL Server Enterprise in the server cal model. Many of our listeners might not even know what the heck the server cal model is for SQL because it's not as often used anymore. But there used to be in the day, it was a big decision. Do you license your servers and your clients, or do you license, it was processors and then eventually cores and virtual cores and all that. But SQL Server Enterprise in the server cal was way cheaper.
It's way cheaper
than Enterprise Core. There were some technical limitations on the number of cores that it would run on, but where it was handy was, I had a customer once that, I think they kept these around because when they retired a SQL Enterprise server and the only people that left that needed to access it ever were like 3 admins, then you, instead of paying $1 gajillion for SQL Enterprise Core licenses, you just license the server because the technical limitations didn't matter, and then you license 5 cals and save a boatload of money. That was like the most awesome pro move I ever saw in licensing history.
2008 was the last time that this was. But they're, again, kind of like from SA, they just
there.
keep
So
allowing you to
if you have those and you are maintaining them, that's a big deal. You can't maintain them under CSP. So that would be something you're giving up, and that one could cost you a lot of money. Again, it's nichey. We don't see it that often, really. But those of you out there that take advantage of this, who you are. This would be a bit of a challenge. Right to license SQL by virtual core, you can do that in EA CSP. Just you have to have a subscription. Or license it with software assurance under MPSA. So a little bit more complicated there. And same thing.
A lot of that's a math problem, right? It's like SQL standard, if you're virtualizing, you license by the VM. SQL Enterprise is a math problem because you can do kind of like Windows Server Data Center, license your host in the physical cores and do the unlimited virtualization, and then do your math comparison to your virtual estate and how many virtual cores. So kind of a math problem there, but still very similar as like Windows Server and being able to do it at the individual VM level. Same kind of software assurance benefits that we talked about too. A-Hub, flexible virtualization is bringing to kind of an authorized outsourcer. There's the one caveat at the bottom of bring your own license to listed provider. That doesn't actually exist on the CSP program. So one limitation there. But I think to your point, you could do companion MPSA by software assurance, and you could get around that.
So bottom line with Windows and SQL Server 2, like if you haven't rationalized either of these in a while, like looking at CSP versus EA, you might as well rationalize anyways and see what kind of savings you have available, as part of this. Because if you haven't done it in a long time, especially with Windows Server, there's been some changes. And 2022 is a while ago, but not that long ago. So I mean, if you've been in an EA for several years, it might be a good time to do it. Easy way to do it is if you look at your license entitlements and you have like 4 times the standard than you do data center,
Yeah.
you know, chances are you're stacking standard somewhere. You don't need
Yeah.
to do that anymore when you probably save you some money.
Yeah.
But okay. So let's see. Next up, or the last piece here is developers. Okay. So this definitely is a bit of a complication for CSP. You know, I used to work at a place where we did a bunch of admin, like I admin this for, you know, it's different. It's a different experience, requires a different mindset. Not that you can't, not, you know, not saying one is better than the other, but it's definitely a different experience. So let's start with the obvious in that, like purchasing the Visual Studio with, you know, license and software assurance, like again, available in MPSA, but not in
CSP.
And right? I believe is that a server or an app? It's a server product.
Visual Studio falls in the app pool.
So it may not be as good. Like the price, that may be one of those things where you have a big enough server footprint to qualify for level D in the server pool, but hardly anybody has enough MPSA to qualify as the level A app pool.
Level A, yeah.
So, you know, a companion CSP a companion MPSA may cost you more. But then again, a lot of customers only have a couple hundred of these, a few hundred of these. Like they don't have these by the thousands. So
or I guess you could do a standalone SCE as well. You only need 20 Visual Studio Enterprise.
Yeah, there's ways around it if you find, you know, CSP appealing. But some of the other big differences are like buying, getting it with GitHub, like not an option, right?
No. You can buy standalone GitHub Enterprise on CSP, but Microsoft, they do have options on Visual Studio. You can get with or without GitHub, and it's very similar in price. They actually said it was like the same price, but they couldn't charge the same price for 2 different services. So it's like 6 cents difference a year. But yeah, that exists on EA. That doesn't exist on CSP. You can buy like a Visual Studio Professional, like one-time license only. But when you're getting software assurance, you're getting that, they used to call it the MSDN subscription and like your test dev benefits. You're not getting that part of the license where you have software assurance in the CSP world. So some limitations around that. But again, there's workarounds on different programs to be able to still do that. And then they do have the ability to buy through really goes through like the Visual Studio Marketplace, and it gets built through Azure. You could do a subscription to Visual Studio if you didn't want to own it. But there you're giving up some of those MSDN rights.
The administration's a little bit different because you're setting up a subscription in Azure. You've got to govern that subscription in Azure, which means you're doing like like you're doing assignments there, and it's definitely a different process than what you're used to on the EA. And I would say, you know, probably not a superior process in this case. Like it was easy. I think it was a little bit easier in the you know, in the EA, not insurmountable. And like I said, you know, test dev is usually not the biggest part of your, you know, not that big a part of your spend. So there are workarounds, but you know, be prepared for some complications. Where there is a difference there is no workaround for is the test dev credits, right?
Yeah, kind of 2 different sort of test dev credits. One at more of an individual basis. So you don't get that in CSP, you would get that in EA. So depending on the level, if you have Visual Studio Pro, I think it's $50 a month. Visual Studio Enterprise is $150. And then I think Test Pro is the middle one at $100. So more individual credits. It doesn't pool or anything like that, but I mean, it's available. So there would be some restrictions there on CSP. And then if you went to more of like a team approach to your test dev environment, they have test dev subscription types. So within Azure, when you're setting up a subscription, it asks you what type that you want. I think the enterprise subscription is the standard kind of production one. And then they offer a test dev one on EA. So you get, I think it's like Linux based rates. Or like A Hub is similar pricing. You just a lot cheaper to your test dev work, but it is limited to Visual Studio subscribers. So that's where you have to have software assurance or you know, some sort of active Visual Studio license there with with
I'm
that
not sure how much
subscription.
use the bigger enterprise customers get out of the first benefit, where like
Yeah,
each
probably.
developer gets their own.
Yeah.
Because I know a lot of times organizations really don't want people like
Yeah,
sort of
doing their own
doing
thing.
their own thing, like in their own little private sandbox, because like who knows what's going on in the private sandbox, and
Yeah.
since Microsoft won't pool it,
Yeah.
like I think that's kind of a wasted benefit
Yeah.
on bigger organizations. But the test the discounted rates for for Visual Studio subscribers to be able to set up test dev environments in Azure, that one matters. Like
Yeah.
that's that's an unfortunate
I
loss
want to
for
say it's
PHP.
42%.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. Okay, it's not gonna break the bank, but
Yeah.
it's definitely something that's a helpful EA feature.
And this is something we've brought up to Microsoft many times.
Oh yeah.
Yeah. It hasn't changed anything.
I know.
So,
I
but
know.
that's
we have definitely been talking about that with Microsoft for a very long
yeah.
time. Okay, so those are like the major differences and some of the minor differences between at sort of at the product level between CSP and EA. One of the things again that we recommend is there's a fairly easy way to assess this, right? Like you take where you're at now, you look at what would that look like in CSP land. That the pricing, at my next renewal event, right? The pricing is relatively easy to predict because you can say, okay, well here's where I'm at with my EA today. Here's what an EA renewal would look like, because sometimes there's a big fiscal cliff there that you're not aware of because again, terms have changed, pricing has changed, your discounts expire, et cetera, et cetera. Those incentives that they gave you last time don't get automatically re-upped. So, if you were paying $100 a year for your EA, I'm just throwing out as a round number, you look down the renewal and be like, oh, well, the EA is going to cost me $120. Oh, but now add that, say, let's say you're level D, add that 12 or 13% on top of that. And it's like, oh, that's a pretty big fiscal cliff.
Yeah.
So the easy way is to say, okay, well, what would that look like in CSP if I shifted to because nobody's going to do very few are going to do a raw, EA to CSP. They're going to do EA to CSP plus MPSA or EA to CSP plus SCE and MPSA or SCE. Like there's going to be some combo. The bigger you are, the more challenging it's going to be, which again, what I don't want, it sounds like a lot of work, and it is, but it's worth looking at because like you might not have a choice next time. The more cloudified your EA becomes, the more you drift towards that position where Microsoft's gonna be like, okay, you're moving to the modern experience, like it or not.
Yeah.
And so it'd be good to get out ahead of that now to know what you're in for. But like the biggest thing I think is with a lot of changes coming down the pipe, I don't know that locking in for 3 years is necessarily a good deal.
Yeah.
So it's worth, I think it's worth taking a hard look at it. Use it as an excuse to rationalize your Windows and SQL in your perpetual estate. See if you can save some money there. Check out MPSA, especially if you're level B and you have a big server footprint. That could be a huge benefit. But like I said, we have a system to kind of rate and rank this stuff. So you kind of go through it and be like, okay, here's my compatibility score with EA. Here's my compatibility score with CSP, and here's the workarounds I would need to have. And I think one of the nice things about SHI, shameless plug, is like our licensing specialists are world class at walking through the transition. If CSP is in the card,
we'll go through all this.
They go through like there's an exit strategy for the EA that's kind of fraught with a little bit of peril too. Like you got to make sure you dot the I's and cross the T's the right way, and to make sure that everything happens. So when you flip the switch, it doesnn't.
There's an opt-out form that you'd want to make sure it gets done, so you don't keep getting an invoice. All that stuff would work through.
But at least right now, what we would encourage is take a look. Let's do the due diligence. Let's see what it looks like, and you'll know pretty quick. If it's within within like striking distance or not. Fair. Okay. So anything else you want to add to that?
I don't think so. I mean, we can easily do cost comparisons and then go through, I guess all these slides are just kind of made off of our agreement matrix, which would be that exercise. So very easy to go through that and see, what the product differences are. Maybe if there are limitations, we can identify those in that matrix. And
look at which ones matter to you, which ones don't, which ones have workarounds, which ones don't, et cetera. So fascinating times, and we appreciate you joining us for this second session, and look forward to seeing you on the next one. Thanks, everybody.
Thanks.